My name is Alexis, and I'm 24 years old. Up until recently, I lived alone in a cramped rental apartment, working from home as a freelance graphic designer. My family consisted of my parents and my older sister Chloe, who's 26. We weren't exactly close. After I graduated from college 2 years ago, I'd pretty much kept my distance from them. The only contact we had was when I'd send them holiday texts or birthday messages. That was about it. My mom had this habit of always comparing me to Chloe, and my dad never really seemed to care much about what I was doing with my life. Chloe was the golden child. She was loud, confident, and always got what she wanted. Me? I was just the quiet one who stayed out of everyone's way. I preferred it that way, honestly. Less drama. I'd been renting this tiny one-bedroom place for 2 years, paying way too much for what it was worth, but it was mine. I had my little home office set up in the corner of my bedroom, and I managed to make decent money doing design work for small businesses. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me the freedom I wanted. Then one day, completely out of the blue, my grandfather called me. He's my mom's dad, and we'd always had a pretty good relationship when I was younger. He was the one person in the family who never made me feel like I wasn't good enough. "Alexis, sweetheart, I need to talk to you about something important," he said when I picked up the phone. "Can you come visit me this weekend?" I was surprised. Grandpa lived about an hour away in this nice suburban neighborhood, in the same house he'd owned for like 30 years. He rarely asked anyone to visit, usually we just saw him at family gatherings. So that Saturday, I drove over to his place. The house was exactly like I remembered from when I was a kid, this big 2-story place with 4 bedrooms, a huge kitchen, and a basement. It was way too big for just him, but he'd never wanted to move. When I got there, he made us coffee and we sat in his living room. He looked older than I remembered, more tired. "Alexis, I'm going to be straight with you," he said. "I'm getting old, and I don't want to be a burden on anyone. I've been thinking about this for months now, and I've made a decision." I nodded, not sure where this was going. "I found a really nice private nursing home about 20 minutes from here. It's expensive, but I've got savings, and I can afford it. The thing is, I don't want this house sitting empty. I want you to live here, Alexis. The house is paid off, and you're the only one in the family who actually has their life together. Your parents are still paying off their mortgage on that tiny apartment, and Chloe." He shook his head. "Well, Chloe's got her own issues." I stared at him. "Grandpa, are you serious? You want me to live here?" "Dead serious. You're working from home anyway, right? This place has plenty of space. You could set up a proper office, have room to breathe. What do you say?" I couldn't believe it. This house was huge compared to my apartment, and it was in a great neighborhood. Plus, I'd always loved this place. "Yes," I said without hesitation, "yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Grandpa." He smiled. "Good, I'll be moving to the nursing home next week. You can start moving your stuff in whenever you want." Within a few days, I'd packed up my entire apartment and moved into Grandpa's house. I chose his main bedroom as mine. It was spacious and had these big windows that let in tons of natural light. The room right next to it became my office. It was perfect. I had space to spread out my work, multiple monitors, everything I needed. For the first time in years, I felt like I could actually breathe. No more cramped quarters, no more noisy neighbors. Just me and this beautiful house. Those first few weeks were amazing. I was more productive than I'd ever been, and I actually enjoyed being at home. I'd video call with Grandpa every few days to check on him, and he seemed really happy at the nursing home. He'd made friends and was getting good care. Everything was perfect, too perfect, as it turned out. About a month after I'd settled in, I was working in my office when I heard cars pulling into the driveway. I looked out the window and saw my parents' car and Chloe's beat-up Honda. My stomach dropped. They all got out with suitcases. I walked downstairs and opened the front door before they could knock. My parents stood there with Chloe, all of them holding bags like they were planning to stay for a while. Hey, Alexis, my mom said, pushing past me into the house. We heard you were living here now. My dad followed her in, looking around the place like he was inspecting it. Chloe came in last, already pulling out her phone to take pictures. Yeah, Grandpa offered me the house, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What's going on? Why do you all have suitcases? Chloe dropped her bags right in the middle of the living room. Aunt Linda told us about your little arrangement here. We figured it was time for a family reunion. My mom nodded. This house belonged to my father, which means I have just as much right to be here as you do. Besides, look at this place, it's got 4 bedrooms. Way more space than our apartment. And it's closer to my work, my dad added. The commute from our place is killing me. I felt my chest getting tight, but Grandpa gave me the house to live in. He specifically said. He said you could live here, Chloe interrupted. He didn't say we couldn't live here too. Come on, Alexis, don't be selfish, this place is huge, and you're just one person. I wanted to argue, but something in me just shut down. I'd always been the one who avoided conflict in our family. Maybe they had a point, maybe it would be nice to not be alone in this big house all the time. Okay, I heard myself saying, I guess we can try it. Chloe clapped her hands together, great. I called dibs on the bedroom with the best lighting for my TikTok videos. For the first couple of months, things actually went pretty smoothly. We had a routine. I stayed in my area of the house most of the time, working in my office during the day. My parents kept to themselves upstairs, and Chloe was usually out with friends or holed up in her room making videos. We'd eat dinner together sometimes, and it felt almost normal. Like maybe this family thing could actually work out. I started thinking that maybe I'd been too harsh on them before. Maybe we just needed to live together to remember why we were family. But then the utility bills started coming in. The first electric bill was nearly $300. The water bill was double what it used to be when it was just Grandpa living here. The gas bill for heating was through the roof because now everyone was home all the time, and Chloe liked to keep her room at like 75 degrees. I sat at the kitchen table one evening with all the bills spread out in front of me. My parents were watching TV in the living room, and Chloe was upstairs. Hey, guys, I called out, can you come here for a minute? They came into the kitchen, and I showed them the bills. So, these are all a lot higher than they used to be, I said. I think we need to figure out how to split them up between all of us. My dad laughed, Alexis, this is your house. Grandpa gave it to you, right? That means you're responsible for it. But you're all living here too. You're using the electricity and water. Chloe came downstairs and grabbed a soda from the fridge. What's all the fuss about? Alexis wants us to pay her bills, my mom said. That's not what I said, I just think we should share the costs since we're all living here. Chloe rolled her eyes, look, nobody forced you to accept this house. You wanted to be the homeowner, so you get to pay the homeowner bills. That's how it works. But. No buts, my dad said, you're the one getting the benefit of owning property. We're just guests here. After that conversation, something shifted. It was like they'd decided I was trying to take advantage of them, when really I was just trying to be fair. The next week, I noticed they'd stopped doing their share of the household chores. Dishes piled up in the sink, and when I asked about it, my mom said she was too tired from work. You're home all day anyway, she said. It makes sense for you to handle the house stuff. Then they started making rules. Little things at first, like Chloe deciding that the living room TV was off limits during certain hours so she could practice her TikTok dances. My dad claimed the garage as his workshop space, even though I'd been using part of it for storage. But the big confrontation came about a month later, during dinner. We were all sitting around the kitchen table, and my parents started talking about the house layout. You know, Alexis, my mom said, cutting her chicken. I've been thinking about how you're using 2 whole rooms just for yourself down here. My dad nodded, seems like a lot of space for one person. Especially when the rest of us are sharing the upstairs. Everyone should have equal rights in this house, my mom continued. You've been using that office room for months now. Maybe it's time to consolidate and move your work stuff into your bedroom. Chloe looked up from her phone. Yeah, and I've been looking for a good place to set up my video equipment. That room has the best natural light in the whole house. I could turn it into a proper studio. I felt my face getting hot, but I need that office space for my work. I have clients, and video calls, and all my equipment is set up in there. You can make it work in your bedroom, my mom said. People work from their bedrooms all the time. That room would be perfect for my content creation, Chloe added. I could really grow my following with a setup like that. I looked around the table at all of them. They were all staring at me, waiting for me to agree. Just like always. So I did. I nodded and said, okay, I'll move my stuff. The next weekend, I spent 2 days relocating my entire office setup into my bedroom. It was cramped and awkward, but I made it work. Chloe immediately claimed the room and started painting one wall bright pink for her brand aesthetic. After that, things got worse pretty quickly. It was like giving up that room was some kind of signal to my family that they could push me around even more. A few weeks later, I had my friend Jessica over for dinner. We were sitting in the living room afterward, just talking and catching up. It was maybe 9:30 at night when my mom came downstairs in her robe. Alexis, can I talk to you? She said, giving Jessica this look that made it clear she wanted her to leave. Jessica got the hint and said she should head home anyway. After she left, my mom sat down across from me. We need to talk about your guests, she said. They're too loud, and they stay too late. Your father and I work hard all day, and we need our rest. We can't have people over here making noise until all hours of the night. It was 9:30, Mom, and we weren't being loud. It doesn't matter, this is a shared living space now, and you need to be more considerate of the rest of us. You can have friends over. Just not overnight, and not past 8 o'clock on weeknights. I wanted to point out that Chloe had friends over all the time, sometimes until midnight, and they were always loud, laughing and playing music in her room. But I knew it wouldn't matter. The rules were apparently just for me. A couple of weeks after that, I was getting ready to make dinner when I realized we were out of basically everything. I'd been buying groceries for the whole house since my family moved in, which was costing me like $400 a week. I made a list and headed to the store. When I got back with 6 bags of groceries, my mom was in the kitchen. Alexis, I need to talk to you about this whole cooking situation. I turned around. What about it? Well, I've been thinking, and I'm getting pretty tired of cooking for 4 people every night. It's a lot of work, and I'm not getting any younger. Okay, so maybe we can take turns? Or I can cook more often? My mom shook her head. No, I think it would be easier if everyone just cooked for themselves from now on. That way there's no confusion about who's responsible for what. I felt confused, but I buy all the groceries. Right, and you'll keep buying your groceries, and we'll buy ours. It'll be much simpler this way. It felt like a punch in the stomach, but I just nodded, okay, if that's what you want. The next day, I came home from a client meeting to find my dad installing a lock on the refrigerator. What's that for? I asked. Your mother and I decided we need to secure our food, he said, not looking up from the lock. Nothing personal, just want to make sure everything stays organized. I stood there watching him attach this padlock to the fridge door. My own fridge. In my own house. That weekend, I bought a small refrigerator and had it delivered to my bedroom. I also installed a lock on my bedroom door. If they wanted to play the security game, I could play it too. The next few months were tense. We barely spoke to each other except when necessary. I stayed in my room most of the time, eating meals alone and working in my cramped bedroom office setup. Chloe's TikTok studio was always blasting music, and my parents acted like they owned the place. I started calling Grandpa more often, just to vent about what was happening. He always listened patiently and told me to hang in there, that things would work out. Sometimes I recorded conversations with my family on my phone and sent the audio files to Grandpa, just so he could hear how they were treating me. Just be patient, sweetheart, he'd always say. Everything's going to change soon. Then one Friday night in late March, I went out with some college friends. We had dinner and drinks, and I got home around 11. The house was all lit up, which was weird because usually everyone was asleep by then. I walked in to find my parents and Chloe sitting around the dining room table with what looked like a fancy meal spread out. There were candles lit and everything. "Oh, perfect timing," Chloe said when she saw me. "We've been waiting for you." "Waiting for me for what?" "Sit down, honey," my mom said, patting the empty chair. "We're having a family meeting." I felt my stomach drop, but I sat down. They were all looking at me with these serious expressions. My dad cleared his throat. "Alexis, your mother and I have been talking, and we've come to a decision about the living situation here. We think this house is really too big for just one person," my mom said. "And with 3 of us here now, it's actually getting a bit cramped." I looked around the huge dining room. "Cramped?" "The thing is," Chloe said, "we've been doing some math, and it doesn't really make financial sense for all 4 of us to live in this big house when there's a perfectly good apartment sitting empty." My mom nodded. "Our apartment is just sitting there, and we're still paying the mortgage on it. It's wasteful. So we've decided," my dad said, "that it would be better if you moved into our apartment, and the 3 of us stayed here." "It's not like we're leaving you homeless," my mom said quickly. "Our apartment is perfectly nice. It's got 2 bedrooms, which is plenty of space for one person. You'd have way more room than you need. But it's on the complete other side of town. And it's tiny compared to this place." "Size isn't everything," Chloe said. "Besides, you work from home anyway. Location doesn't really matter for you." My dad leaned forward. "The thing is, Alexis, we're still paying the mortgage on that apartment. $850 a month, plus property taxes and insurance. If you moved there, you could take over those payments. But we've already paid $50,000 toward the principal," my mom added. "So you'd need to reimburse us for that equity we've built up." I stared at them. "Let me get this straight. I'd be broke and living in a shoebox while you 3 get to live in Grandpa's house for free." Chloe rolled her eyes. "Everything doesn't have to be about fairness, Alexis. This is what makes the most sense for the family." "And if I say no?" They all exchanged looks, then my dad spoke up. "We've already made the decision. You have 1 week to pack your things and move out." I felt like I'd been slapped. "You're kicking me out?" "We're offering you a very reasonable alternative living situation," my mom said. "But either way, this arrangement isn't working anymore." I stood up from the table, my hands shaking. I looked at all 3 of them sitting there, acting like they were being perfectly reasonable. Like they weren't trying to steal everything from me. "No," I said, "I'm not moving out, and I'm not paying for your apartment. This is insane." My mom sighed. "Well, then I guess you have a week to figure out where you're going to live." I walked straight to my room, locked the door behind me, and pulled out my phone. I sent Grandpa a text message. "They have revealed their true identity." Within 5 minutes, my phone was ringing. "Alexis, what's happened?" Grandpa's voice was sharp with concern. I told him everything. About the ultimatum, about them wanting me to pay $50,000 and take over their mortgage while they kept his house. About how they'd been treating me for months. "I've been sending you those recordings," I said. "You heard how they talked to me. But this is too much, Grandpa. They're trying to steal everything from me." There was a long pause, then Grandpa said, "Don't worry about any of this. I'm going to handle it. Just go to sleep, and don't say anything else to them." "But Grandpa." "Trust me, sweetheart, everything's going to be fine." The next 2 days were tense. My family kept asking if I'd made a decision about moving out, and I just told them I was still thinking about it. They seemed confident that I'd eventually cave, like I always did. Then Saturday morning came. I was in my room working when I heard a car pull up outside. I looked out the window and saw Grandpa getting out of his car with a manila folder in his hands. I heard him knock on the front door, then my mom's voice saying, "Dad, what a surprise, come in, come in." I crept to my bedroom door and opened it slightly so I could hear what was happening in the living room. "I need to talk to all of you," Grandpa said. His voice sounded different. Colder than I'd ever heard it. "Of course," my mom said, "let me get the others." A few minutes later, I could hear all of them gathered in the living room. I snuck out of my room and positioned myself at the top of the stairs where I could hear everything. "I want someone to explain to me what's been going on in this house," Grandpa said. "Nothing's going on, Dad," my mom said. "We're all just living here together as a family." "Is that so?" "Because I've been getting some very interesting phone calls from Alexis. And some very interesting recordings." There was silence. "We just think it would be better if Alexis moved to our apartment," my dad said. "This house is big enough for the three of us, and she'd have plenty of space there." "And she'd pay you $50,000 for the privilege?" "Well, we've already invested a lot in that apartment," my mom said. "It's only fair." Grandpa laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Fair? You want to talk about fair? Let me ask you something. Did any of you think to check who actually owns this house before you started making all these plans?" "What do you mean?" Chloe asked. "I mean, did you bother to find out whose name is on the deed?" "It's your house, Dad," my mom said, "but I'm your daughter, and legally—" "No," Grandpa interrupted, "it's not my house anymore." He opened the manila folder and pulled out some papers. "2 weeks ago, I transferred ownership of this house to Alexis. She is now the legal owner of this property." I heard my mom gasp, "What?" "Every recording Alexis sent me, every story she told me about how you've been treating her, I heard it all. So I went to my lawyer and had the deed transferred. This house belongs to Alexis now." "You can't do that," Chloe shouted. "I already did it. It's done. Legal and binding." "But Dad," my mom said, and I could hear tears in her voice. "I'm your daughter, this house should be mine." "You're my daughter, but you're also a bully. All three of you are. You moved into this house under false pretenses, you've been making Alexis's life miserable, and now you're trying to steal her home and saddle her with your debt." I decided this was my moment. I walked downstairs and into the living room. My family all turned to look at me. "Hi, Grandpa," I said. He smiled at me for the first time since he'd arrived. "Hi, sweetheart." I turned to my family. "I want all three of you out of my house in 24 hours. My mom started crying. "Alexis, please, we're family. Family doesn't treat each other the way you've treated me." My dad just sat there looking defeated. Chloe started yelling, "This is bullshit. You can't just kick us out. We live here." "Actually, she can," Grandpa said. "This is her house now, you're trespassing." "I'm staying here until they're gone," Grandpa announced. "I want to make sure this transition happens peacefully." The next 24 hours were a whirlwind. My parents packed their things quietly, my mom crying on and off. My dad kept shaking his head and muttering under his breath. Chloe was the worst. She screamed at me, called me selfish and ungrateful, and said I'd regret this. But I didn't regret it. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. By Sunday evening, they were gone. I immediately called a locksmith and had all the locks changed. Grandpa stayed for dinner, and we talked for hours. "I'm proud of you for standing up to them," he said. "I know it wasn't easy. Thank you for believing me, and for the house, I still can't believe you did that. You're the only one in this family who deserves it, Alexis. You're kind, you work hard, and you don't try to take advantage of people." For the next few weeks, my phone buzzed constantly with calls and texts from my parents. They alternated between trying to guilt me and trying to convince me to let them come back. I ignored all of it, and eventually blocked their numbers. About a month later, Chloe showed up at my door. "I'm done with Mom and Dad," she said. "I never wanted to kick you out in the first place, that was all their idea." I looked at her standing on my porch. "Really?" "Really, they're the ones who came up with the whole apartment scheme. I just went along with it because I didn't want to cause drama." "You called me selfish and ungrateful." I was upset. "Look, we're sisters, Alexis. Can't we work this out? I promise I'll be different this time. I thought about it for about 2 seconds. No, Chloe. I'm done living with family, I'm done with all of this. But. No, I'm sorry, but no. I closed the door and watched through the window as she walked back to her car. My parents tried a few more times over the next year. They sent me gifts on my birthday and Christmas, but I sent them all back. They had relatives call me to try to guilt me into reconciling, but I held firm. I heard through the family grapevine that my parents were telling everyone who would listen about how unfairly I'd treated them. They called me selfish and ungrateful to anyone who would listen, but I didn't care. The truth was, they'd had a chance to live peacefully with me. They could have split the bills, treated me with respect, and we could have been a real family. Instead, they showed me exactly who they really were. Now they're back in their apartment, still paying that mortgage. Chloe found herself a boyfriend and moved in with him. And me? I'm living in Grandpa's house, my house, exactly the way I always should have been.